I'm very pleased to be here with my renowned predecessor, Professor Prodi, dear Romano, distinguished guests, but most and foremost, Signora Sassoli, carissima Alessandra, cari Livia e Giulio. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for asking me to join today. And many, many thanks to David's friends and colleagues who were putting this book together. You can imagine, as I read it, I could almost hear his voice again. Calm, clear, and yet so passionate, so intense. I had the privilege to be with David Sassoli when he pronounced many of these speeches. But there's one in particular that I cannot forget. In the summer of 2021, David asked me to join him on a visit to the former concentration camp of Fossoli in Italy. It is a place where Nazi soldiers slaughtered tens of Italian partisans who were fighting for our collective freedom. And David's speech in Fossoli was a love letter to Europe. Our union, he said, was born as a response to the horror of the Holocaust and the war. And then he asked a very simple but powerful question, and I quote him: "Have you ever wondered why authoritarian regimes, all of them, are so afraid of Europe? We don't wage war, we don't impose our model, so why are they so worried about us? There's only one reason. Our values make them afraid. Because freedom leads to equality, to justice, transparency, opportunities, and peace. And if it happened in Europe, it can happen anywhere. Let's not forget who we are and what thirst for Europe there is in the world." End of quote. This was months before Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine. A country and a people that had decided to embrace European values. And it feels like a prophecy today. The whole visit of Fossoli was incredibly moving for me. David had a special connection to that place. After the war, a group of men and women of faith decided to turn that place into a shelter for war orphans. One of his supporters of this initiative was a Catholic friar called David Maria Turoldo. David Maria Sassoli was named after him. On the day of our visit, David walked me through the camp. We met the survivors and the children of the victims. And then, when the trumpets played the silence to commemorate the victims, in the most solemn moment of the celebration, David broke protocol and took my hand. A simple gesture of unity that was worth millions of words. This was David Sassoli, a man with a passion for democracy and for Europe. There are three things about him that always struck me and that I would like to share with you today. First, his deep sense of history. David was a man with a long memory, and this is what made him so passionate about Europe. He knew exactly what came before our union. He knew it from his father, who fought in the resistance. He knew it from his youth, when David was an active member of an association called La Rosa Bianca, in memory of the brave young Germans who opposed Nazis. He never got tired of speaking about the horrors of World War II and the visionary courage of those who built our united Europe. The day he was elected president of the European Parliament, David said, and I quote him, "The European Union is not an accident of history. Our history is written in suffering, in the yearning for freedom of Sophie and Hans Scholl, in the desire for justice of the Warsaw's ghetto's heroes, in the freedom movement that were put down by tanks in our eastern countries. We are not an accident of history, but the children and grandchildren of people who found the antidote to the disease of nationalism." End of quote. David felt the responsibility not only to preserve the memory of our past, but to prevent the past from coming back. That's exactly what I heard him say in Fossoli and many other times. If it happened once, it can happen again. He believed it is our duty to be vigilant. And David was indeed a guardian of democracy and rights in our union. That is why he was so vocal in denouncing every new episode of anti-Semitism. That is why he fought so hard to treat migrants with dignity and solidarity. That is why, as a devout Catholic, he supported LGBTIQ rights and fought relentlessly against discrimination. The values of our founding fathers and mothers were also David's compass for the future. David believed that European democracy, in its power, and he believed in its potential, to grant growing rights to more and more people. He believed in the European Parliament's vital role as the house of European democracy. And he revolutionized the way the Parliament works during the pandemic, so that he could keep serving the European people in these times of extreme need. But David also knew that democracy is fragile, and it must be protected from the enemies within and outside. David would never have tolerated corruption, neither within the ranks of parliamentarians, nor within any government body or institution. He would now fight with all his strength for honesty and against foreign interference in our democracy, just like the current leadership of the European Parliament is doing. It is perhaps because of this sense of history that David always understood when we, as European leaders, were called to shape the course of Europe. And that's the second thought about David that I would like to share. As a long-time journalist, he could always feel when the time was ripe for change. And this transpires from his speeches at the European Council in the final section of this book. In the early months of our mandates, David's message to European leaders was loud and clear. They've spoken up, and they demand one thing above all. Listen to our young people. Listen to their voices. Listen to what they want. It's climate action and climate justice. And he said, and I cite, we should have taught our children that the gift we have received, our planet, is fragile. Instead, they are teaching us now. End of quote. David knew how to listen, but he also knew how to lead. It is also thanks to David and the Parliament's support that we could push through the European Green Deal as a first proposal of the new European Commission. And I'm deeply grateful for his support. And it is also thanks to him that the European Green Deal focuses so much on social justice and on a just transition. That is his handwriting in it. Then the pandemic came. And once again, David was a voice of wisdom inside the European Council. I remember very well the crucial summit when we agreed on Next Generation EU, our proposal for Europe's recovery plan, in unity. And as always, David didn't mince words and warned at the beginning, and I quote, "The very survival of our union is at stake. The whole world is watching us. Let's do our citizens proud." End of quote. David wasn't only a fine speaker, he was also a fine politician. He understood the mechanics of politics and the logics of power, but everyone could see that David had entered politics for passion, not for power. And that's what made him so credible. That's what made him so credible and authoritative. That is why, when he passed away, people from all sides of the political spectrum paid tribute to David Sassoli. His passion and honesty shine through political actions. And my third and final memory of David has to do with something that you won't find between the pages of this book, but that everyone who met him can never forget. His smile and his clear eyes. David was a kind man, il presidente buono, as someone called him. And while he never lost his smile, David knew how to fight for what he believed in. He fought for social justice in the difficult months of pandemic. He fought for solidarity inside our union. He was even declared persona non grata by Russia because of his unequivocal stance for human rights. David was indeed kind and courageous, wise and audacious. And you couldn't choose a better title to sum up his life and his service to our union. After all my meetings with him, whenever we said goodbye, David would always tell me in French, "Bon courage."